Well, good morning. It was an awesome college football weekend. I've been busy between being sick, some technical difficulties. I actually recorded a couple videos and then the audio corrupted, so couldn't get those out. It's busy with tests and papers and all the above. But college football is here, and it was a great weekend. So we're just going to jump into a few big stories from the games that I watched and talk about just some underlying storylines with these games and why they're important for the future of college football. So let's start here with Alabama. Alabama took on Tennessee at home. This one was Alabama's fourth consecutive ranked game against an SEC opponent, and they won 37-20. If you didn't watch this game, it might seem way closer than it was. Or it might seem way wider margin than it was. This game was really decided at the end of the first half. One play can completely flip the script. And I think that Alabama in these games has really showed all of the ways that they can win in these last four games. They can win getting a lead in a nail-biter. They can win on the road at Missouri. They can get out to a lead. They can control the pace of the game as well. They can win at home against Vanderbilt, against a high-powered offense. The defense can step up in a big way. But this game, it was the interception on the goal line. Alabama can be clutch, too. And that stadium was absolutely rocking. It was a great play by Xavier Brown, who just read Aguilar's eyes there. And really, that interception just sucked the life out of Tennessee. They went from being within 3 points. They went from it potentially being, I think that would have been 16-10. It would have been a 6-point game within a touchdown to going down 23-7 at the end of the first half. And that is really your big ticket script here. I mean, that's what decided this game. And from then, it really felt like Tennessee never quite recovered just from a mental standpoint, and especially on the road. They haven't beat Alabama at home since 2003. The other big thing that this does for me is you look down here, and Kalen DeBoer, since being in college football, he now has a record of 19-3 versus ranked opponents. That is just unheard of. It's I think an 85.6, nearly 6%. Or 86% about win percentage against ranked teams. It's the greatest in college football history with at least 10 opponents. He's above Frank Leary. He's above some of the all-time greats, Urban Meyer, and at the start of his college career. I mean, just an unbelievable record against ranked opponents. He might falter at the start, but having someone that can win the big games and does win the big games, he might be the opposite of James Franklin, which is kind of funny because he certainly got it done. Let's move on to the next game. I watched this one a little earlier in the day. It was Georgia-Ole Miss. This is the game day game. This one was a fantastic game. It was back and forth. Both quarterbacks played well. Both offenses looked sharp. I think in this one, the real difference to me was last season was the line of scrimmage. Last season we saw Ole Miss go out into the transfer portal, get all these guys to the line of scrimmage, literally to beat Georgia because they could not beat Georgia. And they did. And then this time on the road, they only ran for the ball for about 80 yards, and they couldn't stop Georgia. Their defense could not stop Georgia. Georgia scored on nearly every possession in this game. They won by 8 points, covered the spread. It was another cash in for me there. Gunnar Stockton threw 4 touchdowns. They ran for 220 yards. Yes, 220 yards. And that's really the difference. When Georgia can pound on the ground game, when they can stop you, they can get a couple of critical stops down the road. Ole Miss didn't score in the fourth quarter. They were ahead at the end of the third, and Georgia came back, rallied back, and Ole Miss didn't score in the fourth. So I think that's the difference. Georgia's defense can make timely plays. It might not be the Georgia of old, the dominant lines of scrimmage, the fantastic offense, running backs, tight ends, all the above, but they're still really, really good on the ground. And they've got dynamic tight ends. Lucky this game had 3 touchdowns. They didn't turn the ball over. Gunnar Stockton fumbled it once, but he got it back. That was a huge one. There were no turnovers in this game. It was just a fantastic, high-scoring firework game. But for me, when Georgia can continue to run the ball, they ran the ball against Alabama, but they couldn't get everything else going. And so their commitment to the ground game is going to win them a lot of games. And I think this Georgia team can probably beat just about anyone in the country, maybe except for their kryptonite in Alabama. Okay, let's move on now to another late game. It was Notre Dame taking on USC. And this is one where Notre Dame, if they win, likely secures their spot in the playoff. Now, there's a lot of season left. I know there's a lot of season. I'm not trying to jump the gun and say they're in. But this is a huge ranked win against USC at home. And, yeah, this one, I think the biggest takeaway to me was that Notre Dame's special teams might be the best in the country. In terms of making timely plays, this defense looks similar to last year where they're getting takeaways. It's Notre Dame filling in the rest of the lines around the game, where your offense still plays well, your running attack, they ran for 300 yards. Jeremiah Love had his career high in rushing yards. But to me, Jeremiah Love running for 228 yards, yes, that absolutely helped you win. And, of course, it was a huge reason for winning. I'm not saying that he didn't win them this game, but Jadarian Price's kickoff return for a touchdown really kind of gave Notre Dame the edge. They took the lead back at that point in the third quarter, and they never gave it back to USC. So to me, that's a huge takeaway. It seems like every win that they've had this year, they get a special teams play. They get a touchdown on a kickoff return. They get a conversion in the punt group, a fake punt. They block a punt. They block a kick. This team does everything outside of the box to win. And they have that competitive edge in those other categories. It seems like a lot of other big-time teams forget about these sides. You don't see these teams in the SEC with kickoff returns and with interception or with, fake punts and as many interceptions as the Irish. So they have just been really, really good in these categories a little bit outside the box. So that's been really impressive to me. They got 2 interceptions against Maiyava, who'd been nearly perfect. They sacked him, I think, 4 times. Well, sorry, they sacked him 3 times in this game, and they also ended with 6 tackles for a loss. They played the flats well. The interceptions were huge. Christian Gray, of course, with that big one. He got burned going deep on one play, and then on the next, a few series later, he got the interception. Now, their kicking has been bad. It was great last year. Their kicking was pretty bad. They missed an extra point and a field goal from Burnett. It was a pouring rain game. There's a lot that could go wrong. And to me, it's Notre Dame winning all facets of the game that's going to keep them in the conversation for the playoff. And I think this offense is even better than last year. So we'll probably talk about them more as the season goes along, but that's what really stuck out to me. All right, let's move on to Texas. Texas versus Kentucky. Kentucky's not ranked, yes, but this game did go to overtime, and I'm going to say it. I've said it before. Arch Manning is not a great quarterback. He's not that good. He threw a sub 50% completion percentage, just over 100 yards. It was not good. And say what you want about it, but this Texas team winning by 3 points against Kentucky in overtime is really shaky. Kentucky beat them in almost every statistical category here. It's a miracle, a sheer miracle that Texas won this game. And the way they did it was their defense. They did not win because of Arch Manning and the offense. They got 5 sacks on defense, gave Boley a tough time. They got the critical interception, and the defense put them in positions to really win this game. They scored a touchdown in that second quarter and didn't score a touchdown the rest of the game. Kentucky rallied back with 10 points in the fourth quarter, and Arch could not get this team more than a field goal on offense. So I'm just disappointed by this Texas team. I thought there was more a little bit deeper down. And they still have a great defense. They still are great at the line of scrimmage. It's no surprise there. They held Ohio State to 17 points. But Ohio State just showed that at the start of the season they showed this. And a lot of Texas's competition since has showed it. Even against Oklahoma, it was not an offensive juggernaut. Oklahoma's defense is fine. They can't really run the ball. They're not good on the line of scrimmage. And Texas is pretty good on the line of scrimmage. So if you can't compete with them up there, they're going to have a chance. Not because of Arch's dynamic ability to throw the ball down the field. They don't have great receivers. But because they can stop you at the line of scrimmage. They can run the ball when needed. And yeah, they're better than most other teams in the SEC at the line. So let's move on to the last one, Louisville versus Miami. This was a Friday night game. Couldn't talk about this one on Saturday. I was traveling. But Louisville gets the big win. They actually just lost to Virginia a week ago. So they're 5-1, 2-1 in the ACC. And, of course, Miller Moss is their quarterback. He was the USC starter, I think, last year. I think that's right, but he got benched. And yeah, this game to me was, a lot of people, it was a shock. Miami was favored by over 2 touchdowns, I think. They just came off that huge victory against Florida State, and I think they had a bye last week as well. But this week, we got a classic Carson Beck game. This one was, I think it was at Miami. Let me check real quick. Yes, it was. It was at Miami. I think I was trying to remember because I flipped this game on in the third quarter and I was doing some other things as well. But it was at Miami. It was not on the road. It was not in a difficult, raucous environment here. But the Cardinals are pretty good. They had a good season last year. They were ranked throughout the season. I don't remember if they ended it ranked. They might have had a couple of losses there at the end to drop them. But Miller Moss was very good, and they ran the ball well as well. Isaac Brown ran for nearly 8 yards a carry, 113 yards there for him. Miller Moss took he didn't take any sacks, a couple of negative runs. But Miami did not get after the quarterback. That was really what surprised me. We've seen Miami be so good on the ground. We've seen him be so good on the pass rush, and they didn't do that in this game. They didn't get after Moss. I'm looking down here, 1 sack for him. They ended with 5 tackles for a loss, but still, 1 sack. They couldn't stop Louisville, and for a great defense, when your offense is faltering, you'd want them to step up. You want Ruben Bain to get after the quarterback. You want these guys to make plays, especially from the linebacker position. And for Miami, it was a Carson Beck forgettable game. 4 interceptions. He had one in the fourth quarter that was actually erased for a penalty. And then a few plays later, he threw another interception. It was just horrific. It was a horrific performance. He was careless. He was blaming his receivers for running the wrong routes. I mean, good gracious, this guy, it was not good. Beck was in the Heisman talk. Beck gets hyped back up again, and then he falls flat on his face. And I think when there are expectations for Carson Beck, he falls short. Miami, everyone was talking, oh, they're really good. This team is really good. And this was a harder one emotionally than Florida State. Florida State was ranked. It was on the road. You had all these reasons to really show up. But in these games where there's not as much talk. It's a Friday night game. It doesn't maybe matter as much in your head. It doesn't feel like as big of a game. You're at home in the games that you should win. How do you win them? They didn't win. They didn't play like they deserved to win. So Louisville got off to that scorching hot start. They led at halftime, and they just controlled the pace of the game. They managed the game better than Miami and Carson Beck did. Malachi Toney's a great receiver. These running backs have been great. But I want to see this team actually step up to expectations. I know that Cristobal has this group firing. They can play in these big games, but can we get consistency? This team will probably still make the playoff, but they're not really going to be tested the rest of the season. So are they even going to be hot by the end of the season? Are they going to be improving? to me, this is a significant step back than some of their other big-time wins this season, like Notre Dame. So I was surprised to see that. Another story here, Billy Napier was fired yesterday, and even though they won against Mississippi State, they were expected to win big. That was one of my best bets of the week. And Mississippi State covered the spread, of course. Florida squeaked out a win, but Napier's gone. And it was something that Florida probably needed to do. Napier would win one or two big games. He did just enough to stay in charge of this Florida team, to run this Florida roster, but they fire him. And whereas I thought maybe the James Franklin one was a little premature, your season was potentially, it was going to be a down season anyway, but you still could have had success in the future. There was a path with James Franklin. There was not a path forward with Billy Napier, in my mind. He was given everything. They changed almost everything. They, revitalized, remodernized a lot of stuff in this Florida athletic department. They let Napier call the plays. They gave him the keys. He got the keys to everything in this Florida program, and they just were disappointing. They couldn't be consistent. They couldn't manage a level of consistency required for LSU, or for Florida, and required in the SEC. And I wonder who the next coach might be. A lot of people are saying Lane Kiffin. Would he leave Ole Miss? I know that I think the difference between Florida and Ole Miss is that Ole Miss might have better players. They might be a better team now. But the organization of Florida is probably it probably gives the coach more ability to succeed. You have more control over all these things. And Lane Kiffin has complained about student attendance. He's complained about football not being the school's primary focus at Ole Miss. He's wanted more control. He's wanted football to be bigger into the spotlight. So he might be a big target. There's a few other guys in there. Curt Cignetti, of course, signed that big contract extension, so he's off the table for Indiana. But yeah, it's a wild ride in college football. Coaches are going down. Other guys are having good seasons all around, and I wouldn't be shocked for a few more dominoes to fall. Brian Kelly lost to Vanderbilt. Didn't talk about that one. I was not able to watch it, so I couldn't really give any specific insight. But Brian Kelly could be the next domino to fall among other guys. So there's some other big time ones that could potentially open up for disappointing seasons. So lastly, let's go over the AP poll. I wanted to just look down here at some of the teams that made it, some that didn't. So starting here, we're going to go 25 through 20 here. Michigan, Arizona State, Illinois, Texas, Cincinnati, and LSU. So Michigan at 25. They beat, I think it was Nebraska this week, which was disappointing. Nebraska had a runway to win out the rest of the season, especially starting with Michigan. They weren't able to do it. Michigan's back in the poll. Personally, I think that USC should have been in the poll. They should have stayed in the poll. And I understand Arizona State. They just beat Texas Tech. That was a huge upset. I was not able to watch that one as well. But that was a huge upset for them to get that big-time victory. And yeah, I think that USC should have been in. I think that the USC lost to Illinois, but they beat Michigan. So the head-to-head should have them in. So to me, I think you stick them in at 25. LSU drops 10 spots to 20. That feels about fair. They're a two-loss team. The two loss teams are kind of sprinkled around. It's hard to have a good picture on them. Texas dropping a spot, I don't mind it. They played an overtime game to Kentucky, and we talked about that. They did not look good. Yeah, LSU to 20 is fine in my head. Louisville jumps up to 19. They were not ranked. Committee's got to pump them back up now that they just beat Miami. Louisville was borderline already in there for me. They were a good team. They've been power rated relatively high this season, and I had the game closer for Miami than than the point spread indicated. Of course, they ended up winning that game, and they rightfully deserve to be in there at 19. The ACC is starting to balance out and get more of a wide spread here. Okay, so Louisville at 19, South Florida at 18, Tennessee at 17, Virginia at 16, Missouri at 15. Missouri jumps up a spot. They didn't play anyone this week, I don't think. Virginia keeps moving up. Tennessee falls 6 spots after the loss to Alabama. Doesn't bother me. They're a 2-loss team. Tennessee should be farther down. So some people had them really high. I don't. I think that's about right for them. Texas Tech drops 7 spots to 14. That feels a little harsh. I mean, was Texas Tech's loss much worse than Miami's loss? They lost to a good Arizona State team, and Miami lost at home. To me, it's like you're afraid to drop Miami too many spots. But I think that Texas Tech probably has a comparable or potentially better resume than Miami. So after that Miami, it was an unranked loss at the time. I know that Louisville's ranked now with 1 loss. They're higher than Arizona State, so be it. But at the time, I think that Texas Tech should not have dropped as many spots as they did. Oklahoma ahead at 13. They moved back up a spot. Notre Dame up to 12. They moved up 1. And yeah, Vanderbilt jumped them with the LSU victory, which is fine. BYU jumped them as well with the big-time victory against Utah in the Holy War. Also pretty solid. I mean, both of those teams deservingly should be ahead with 1 loss and no losses respectively. I don't know that Miami should stay in there at 9 and Ole Miss at 8. Both of those teams lost this week. I would just move Vanderbilt and BYU ahead. They just got bigger wins. Ole Miss, of course, beat LSU, but Vanderbilt beat LSU as well. And I think Vanderbilt has a better resume than Ole Miss, all things considered. So, yeah, Vanderbilt's got the game day game as well. The committee's afraid to put Vanderbilt high, but so be it. Georgia Tech up to 7, undefeated. Feels high. They're undefeated. I guess you just got to keep moving them up. And everyone else moved up in the poll as well. Oregon to 6, Georgia to 5 with the big victory over Ole Miss. Alabama to 4, Texas A&M to 3, Indiana 2, and Ohio State 1. Texas A&M suffered a real scare against Arkansas. They eked out a 3-point victory. I think Alabama should be at 2, personally. They're the first team in SEC history to win 4 ranked games in a row against SEC opponents, and that are also top 16. Not just ranked top 16. These teams that they've beaten are, you look down here, you've got Tennessee at 17. Tennessee fell, but they were top 16 at the time. Missouri, you've beaten Vanderbilt, and of course, why am I forgetting the last team? Georgia. Yeah, I don't know why that one just slipped me there. Of course, Georgia, the biggest one, maybe the biggest win in the country so far. Alabama should be at 2, I think. I think more ranked wins is better than Indiana's 1 ranked win. So, that's just it for the AP poll. I know I'm rambling a bit here. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. We'll have some more content coming out tomorrow. And yeah, drop some ideas down below of anything you'd want to see.